recording now. Okay, you started. So again, thank you all for joining us today on our long-term meeting. Just letting you all know, Counselor Maithia, her voice is cutting out a lot and she's not feeling super well, so she might not speak as much, but she's here with us. And yeah, so
Quick before we get started, it's going to be really weird because I'm going to be cutting in and out. But I think it's important before we dive in. I see that we have, so Kiara, just a question. These are all the folks that we don't have. Is this the whole long-term cohort? Are we missing anyone? And is
we
anyone
are
listening from the short term? The short term people, this like some of the long term people participated in the short term meeting. So, well, not participated, but listened in. Do we have that situation happening this time?
no, so we are missing a couple of members from the long-term meeting. But there are no short-term members here with us, like listening into our meeting.
Okay, great. And then I just want to thank everybody for showing up and participating actively in what we hope will be a good time together to really start thinking about building the infrastructure for our time together, as well as the action plan that comes along with it. And I know that Kiara will also be sharing some guidance on some best practices for us to really be set up for success in our time together. So just because you don't hear me much doesn't necessarily think I'm not listening, but I will be popping in and out. But Kiara is the leader of this. I just want to say thank you, Kiara, for all your hard work and organizing, folks. And I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. So as Councilman has said, just a couple of things to clarify. Um, so the long-term cohort, aka you guys, we've only met in our last whole group meeting back in January, where we did breakout rooms. If you weren't at that meeting, then you haven't had a chance to really talk to all the other long-term members, but this is our official long-term meeting. So now this is the time for us to talk about it. Outside of our monthly scheduled meetings, we haven't met, not officially at least. We have not met officially. But I do want to let you all know that when I send out those emails in the email chain, just like I did to remind you all that we had this meeting today and with all the links and all that stuff, that is the email chain that we've all created so that we're all included. And so if there's something that you do want to let other people know or engage in a conversation with outside of our monthly scheduled meetings, please feel free to use that specific email chain because it does have everything for your cohort in there. And it also has reminders for meetings from the other cohorts. So for example, for today, I sent out a reminder email to the short-term cohort, letting them know that if they wanted to, they were more than welcome to join in on our meeting. But it was obviously not required for them. Just like the short-term meeting last month wasn't required for you guys. But just to put it out there again, you are required to join your cohort meeting because that is the one that you're most involved with. And that's the one that you'll be spending the most time like really dissecting these issues and talking about them at length. So this is a space to do it. Yeah, also to prevent any confusion from happening, we won't be happy. We ask you all to not schedule meetings outside of our monthly times and to instead use the email chain because it has everyone. It has me, Counselor Maithia, Counselor Flynn, Counselor Pippin, and their staffers, as well as all of you guys. So we're all getting the same information and we all have the same starting point. Are there any questions or feel free to unmute or put something in the chat if there's some confusion or anything, letting me know. I also do ask for some grace because I am not the most tech savvy person and Zoom can be very confusing, especially if you're like presenting. But yeah. Okay. And now off to the recap of what we were discussing last time we met. So in case this is this looks familiar. This was from the slideshow that I presented during our January meeting, where it discussed all the stuff that you all put down in the form, like the preference form. So these were the four like the four umbrella issues, sorry, for the long-term cost of living, unhoused persons and their access to essential resources, gentrification, and mental health. And then these are the long-term groups there. All right. So top three choices according to you all is cost of living, gentrification, and unhoused persons and their resources. So this, if you're a visual learner or like you just like think visually, this is for you. I took all that data from the preference form and I just put it here so that it's easy to see. But those are the top three choices, and you can see how it varies for what people chose as first, second, and third.
Yeah, can I
All right.
just say something really quick to that?
Mhm.
So check the chat, Kiara.
Oh, check the chat. Okay.
Yeah, for you. Just wanted to before you all like I know that we chose cost of living, but I want to be mindful of like our ability to like some of this stuff is on the state state uh, laws that we need to pass, and sometimes it's federal. So I just want to be mindful of kind of like some of the things that were selected in this particular cohort. And cost of living there, I think underneath there is just the ability of people being able to um, just manage their day-to-day functions like food insecurity, bills and things of that nature. So I think just in the interest of this exercise and to make sure that we're setting everybody up for success is that I'd like to focus on the cost of living things, on things that we can on the city level have some control over. Not, and I just want to make sure that everybody's clear and working with the same understanding of how you envision cost of living, because what I don't want to do is find ourselves in a situation where we're thinking that we're gonna increase the livable wage or we're gonna reduce the cost of housing. Like those are all issues that need attention, but I just want to make sure that within the constructs of what we can and cannot do, that we have a better understanding of that framework when you guys talk about cost of living. And I'm sure it was broken down somewhere, but just for my brain and just for the sake of this exercise as that we're meeting now as a group together, it would be helpful to unpack that one a little bit further as we continue to have these conversations. But I'll kick it back to Kiara. I just wanted to flag that it would be helpful. But Kiara, I'll kick it back to you.
Of course. Um, so what was shared last meeting? Um, as you might have like heard in my email, I did say that um mental health I did say that the Zoom followed me and not recording each individual breakout room, so I couldn't get everything that was said. But from what I was able to jot down, this is what I heard. So using mental health as a lens for looking at the issues that unhoused people face. Um, just also letting you know this doesn't mean that the issues that we're going to talk about moving forward are mental health or just unhoused people and their resources. It's more so that this is something that was mentioned, but you all have the power, so to speak about all of this and what you all feel like you want to pursue the most. All right. So before we go on to a little more of the specifics around cost of living and gentrification, I do just want to check in with you guys because I did kind of miss it. So how are you guys doing? How whether it be in terms of the task force or just like in general, if you feel comfortable sharing that.
I always like, yes, I love that question. Let's just ground ourselves in how we are walking into the space so that we can self reflect, because sometimes we just dive right in. So, Kiara, thank you for creating space for us to just like, how are we feeling? What type of, what are we carrying into today's task force meeting? Because I think that so much of the work that everybody does It's just go, 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 go. But before we dive into the specifics, I love the idea. Thank you, Kiara, for prompting us to do this. To just check in. We can go popcorn style. Like you can share how you're walking into the space. What are you walking in with? How you're feeling. Um, so that way we can just ground ourselves. And I'll go first. Model behavior. I am feeling incredibly, even though my voice is coming in and out, I am excited about spending time with you all this evening. I'm feeling um, intrigued by what is to unfold here. And I'm going to popcorn it over to Ashley since you have your camera on.
Yeah. Hi, y'all. I am feeling excited to be here. I missed the last cohort meeting, and I'm happy that I was able to make time for this one this evening. I'm going into a vacation this Wednesday, so my mind is like already like kind of forward into just like relaxing on a beach right now. So I'm trying to actively try to be present and be here, but I'm glad to be in the space and be in community. And I'll popcorn it to Dylan.
Thanks. Um, I'm feeling tired. It's been a long day with lots and lots of meetings. A little bit worried. I am among the unhoused. I'm in transitional housing, but really need permanent housing, and that is a constant source of worry. And excited to be joining in this meeting with y'all and thinking about solutions. And I will popcorn it to Stephen.
Steve, you have the floor. This is what you could tell when people are really paying attention, y'all. This is how you get busted, especially when you come to any meetings that we coordinate.
Well,
Steve,
I'm
you
not.
got the
I'm.
floor.
I'm trying to do 3 or 4 things here at one
I
time.
know, I know.
Julia, okay. I'm just very glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to be in this magnificent space. I'm here to learn, understand, and trying to add some value. How about that, Miss Julia?
You did great. You did great. The only thing that you didn't do is you didn't popcorn to somebody, but I'll do that for you. And we're gonna go to Lewis since you're ready. Looks like you're ready to go.
Well, so a moment ago, I felt overwhelmed. It's tax season. It's the peak. Look at the hammer of justice right there upon me. Yeah, but now I feel jealous.
Oh,
Someone's going on vacation. Take me.
yes, yes, yes. Take all of us. Take all
So
of us.
so I feel relieved that someone is getting fun. So
Yeah,
that's a good thing. It's always good to feel good for others.
yes, that's great. Ashley, where you going now? Everybody's gonna want to know where you going, Ashley.
I'm headed to Curacao for a week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
My cousin's husband is from there. It's a beautiful island. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy.
Thank you. I'll enjoy it extra for everybody else.
That's what we expect. Exactly. Great. Thank you. Okay, Christina, you can go next. See, after I called Steven out, I don't want to do that to Christina because she's probably listening. Okay, Christina, you have the floor. If you're available. All right, we'll see you. You're probably on a call or
Oh,
something.
she says in the chat it doesn't let her mic turn on. I'm gonna ask you to unmute to see if that works.
Once it asks you to unmute, we should stay unmuted, right? Just or do we're gonna have to ask permission every time we do this?
Oh, no, no, no. It only asks for permission if you're like an attendee, but everyone here is listed as a panelist, so you can mute and unmute whenever you'd like. I think Christina's mic just might not be working. So Christina, if you want, you could put it in the chat and then we can read it out loud.
We'll go
Uh,
next. And then we can figure out a way that we can help Christina be heard. But we can go to Gigi next.
Hey everyone. My little ones are sick, so a little stressed out, but I'm here. I'm happy to get the ball rolling and make some change, and I'm excited everyone is here too. Wishing everyone, you know, health and some fun coming up. We can follow Ashley over here.
That's right. I know that's right. Okay. So Christina, the other option. Oh, there we go. Now you gotta do what I just asked you to unmute your to show your video. Now I'm gonna ask you to unmute. You have to accept it. Now then when I send you that, I send it to you. Wait, we can't hear you. I just asked you to unmute. I sent you a request to show your video. So I sent you another request to unmute. Check to see if that worked.
Oh, she's gonna leave and then come back, Counselor.
Okay, great. All right.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. All right, and then we have Melissa. So how you feeling?
Good evening, Counselor Mejia and Kiara. Thank you so much for organizing this. I'm Melissa. I'm from Counselor Flint's office. I'm so excited to be here to learn from everyone's wisdom, and I'm really happy because usually I have 2 or 3 night meetings staggered, and tonight's the only night that I don't have 2 ongoing at the same time, and I feel like I could be very present and listen and learn from everyone. So I'm very excited. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So, Christina, I just think that I don't know. I guess I have a hard time with the webinar functions. I know it's well, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. Okay, Christina, um it keeps asking you to unmute, so if you could just accept the invitation to unmute. All right, so I'm the queen of pivot. I'm gonna call you from my number. I'm gonna call you from a number, and I'm gonna bring you in, because when there's a will, there's a way. Okay, and that's okay. Pick up your phone. I'm about to call you. Christina, I'm gonna call you. Okay, I'm dialing your number. Just pick up the phone. Okay. Oh, I'm getting your voicemail. Can you pick up? Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, say hello and tell us how you're feeling, okay? And that's it. That's what troubleshooting here.
I'm so sorry about the audio. It just had me in safe driving mode, so that's exactly why it probably just didn't work with the audio. But I am very grateful and thankful and grounded and happy to be in the space with you all to try and save the world however way we can, just biting one bite at a time. Obviously, we're going to be and thinking about what's going on currently, and I'm still optimistic that we can actually advocate for ourselves and speak on things that are important to us. So I hope you heard that. It kept on asking me to unmute. I accepted the unmute every time, so hopefully I can get that to work soon.
So if you're off safe mode, I'm gonna send you another invite so that I don't have to worry about the phone call. But you see how innovative I am, y'all. I want to make sure everybody gets heard, y'all. I'm like that.
I appreciate it. I really just yes.
Okay, so take off the safe mode situation so that you can be heard.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm gonna hang up. Pick
Okay,
up. Okay.
perfect.
Okay.
You
Okay. Thank you. All right, guys. See how we do? Nobody goes. Y'all better tell the world that I do all of this technical assistance so everybody can be heard in my situations. Okay. All right. So let's try to get Christina back on unsafe mode here. Well, no, safe mode. Um, want her to be safe. All right. So, okay. Thank you, Kiara, for creating space for level setting and relationship building. Because we're gonna be together for hope. We're long term, so we're probably gonna be together longer than the short term people. And a lot of the work around organizing and building is really about building relationships with each other. So, we're going to be asking you all to share, not earthy crunchy granola stuff all the time, but, spending a little bit of time just checking in and see how we're feeling. And as we continue to dive deeper into the things that we deeply care about, I think it's good to build those opportunities within our time together. So thank you, Kiara, for creating space, and I'm going to kick it back to you.
Thank you, Counselor, and thank you all for participating in that little activity. Now, the rest of the meeting is going to be a little more, I don't want to say serious, but I guess serious is the only word that comes to mind. It'll be more focused on these issues. But so cost of living and gentrification, both are very heavy-ish topics, I would say. There's a word that I'm looking for that like keeps slipping my mind. But these are big topics and they have a lot of nuance. That was the word. So I tried my best to break it down a little bit. Where I got all of this information, it is listed in the research doc that I can show you guys later on in the presentation and that I have shared, and I'll reshare it again so you have it. But so cost of living, stuff that impacts. Also, before I start, if someone has a question or something, just letting you know, I can't see the chat right now. And I also can't really, like, if you put your hand up, I'll be able to see you. Or if you unmute, I'll hear you. But if you put something in the chat, there's a chance that I might miss it for a little bit. So feel free to interrupt me. But factors that impact cost of living: housing, food, transportation, education, healthcare, and taxes. So housing, it's paying a rent, paying mortgage, maintaining that house, just putting stuff in your house, and as well as, actually, I'll get back to the supply and demand part later on in the presentation, like in the next slide. But for food, we all know that food is getting very expensive. That also impacts your cost of living. Transportation, whether you take the T to work every day, or if you have a car and you're paying for gas or maintenance or just paying insurance on that car, that is something else that impacts your cost of living. And, the more you pay, the higher cost of living is. But education, so if you have school-age children and they go to private schools, you have to pay for that. And as well as higher education. Yes, Counselor?
So I'm curious, really quick, like in terms of long term, what are you all thinking about in ways to address the issues of cost of living, of what food cost, like how is that, like just curious of the understanding of the cost of living, the utilities, the food, how is that within the construct of the task force? I may have missed it and I don't remember it. I'm so sorry, but just to help us understand kind of like what were we thinking, Kiara? And I see Dylan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick little summary on what these issues were so that then people have like a better understanding of them so that when we discuss them, there's not as many questions. Okay, yeah. Dylan?
Yeah, I was just thinking that the cost of groceries does vary according to which stores you have ready access to. So that might be something that we could think about in terms of city incentives, permitting, trying to have access to affordable, healthy groceries throughout the city.
Perfect. See, that's exactly the type of thinking that will help us as we continue to move this work forward, is making sure that we can connect everything back to what can the city do. In addition to that, there's also there's the Office of Food Insecurity. They have a budget as well. And I think looking at ways to increase it given the signs of the times, and also the distribution, because there is this desire, or at least there's always the desire to want to reach as many people as possible. Not everybody has access to get to the pantry, so that there's also some more infrastructure that we could be building around distribution, and maybe working with local convenience stores to make it easier and more accessible to folks, and working with some of those convenience stores to help them connect with local vendors that could provide fresh fruits and vegetables. So that is really the ecosystem around food, access to quality food in your neighborhood. So that's definitely something that we can tap into. So I just want to keep like going back to kind of like tangible things within the constructs of what we're talking about. So as a team, we're able to start organizing around some of these ideas and starting putting pen to paper. So thank you for that. And I'm going to assume that when people go on camera, they want to say something. That's usually my visual indicator when I'm in Zooms, but I don't want to make that assumption that that's your case.
Yeah, it was both and I was like, oh, I'm listening more intently, and I was thinking about I know part of our task will be like kind of to propose ideas, but I think I'd also want to hear more about what like kind of city council has already considered around like how they're handling cost of living, and how that might impact even like some of the suggestions or like discussions that we're having.
That's a good question. And just so you know that some of these things, the way we've been doing is our initial meeting is just to get a better understanding and unpack things. Then what Kiara's been really good at. And I think Kiara, to Ashley's recommendation, may be very similar to how we had from the short term. We had somebody from public safety in a talk. Maybe we could have somebody from the mayor's office of of food insecurity and food access come to speak at one of our meetings, so that we can share some of their goals and objectives. Now during the budget season, actually now is the time for us to make these asks around some of the uh the funding pieces of the food accessibility issues.
How
So
how long does budget season last?
yeah. So the mayor's budget comes out, I think, the second week in April. And then we start deliberating after we come back from school vacation week. I always say maybe it's like the third week, third or fourth week in April, depending how many weeks there are in April. I always forget. And then we have April, May, and June, about 3 months to deliberate. And we go back and forth, and then the budget gets approved on June 30th. This year, just so you guys know, and just to answer your question, Ashley, on the council, I have asked for the creation of an emergency fund to help support folks who are dealing with issues of housing, food, utility insecurities. And so hopefully that is something that gets into the city budget, and that is going to support folks who are, vulnerable, right? And also income eligible municipal employees. So if this fund is created, it'll go to support issues of food insecurity, housing, and utilities. So while it's not the fix that we might look for, on a short-term basis, at the very least, if we can create this fund, it'll give people some access to some financial relief around some of the issues that we're hearing in today's meeting. But that has to get approved through the budget. So it is a process, but I think you all as the team are tasked with structural things, more things that are going to be long-term and sustainable. More, I see your role more around changing laws and or policies and protocols and procedures that have a deeper impact, that is not just band-aid fixes, but real structural fixes. So while we're creating potentially this fund, it still doesn't tackle the long-term sustainability concerns that you all will bring up, if that is helpful. Okay, sorry, Kia.
Thank you, Counselor, and thank you, Ashley and Doug, for those questions. After I quickly go through this slide and the next, then the time is yours, and I will step back and let you all talk about these issues. But education. So I was mentioning private school for school-age children. If that is something that people are doing for their kids, then that is part of the cost of living, as well as tuition, loans, and other expenses related to higher education. So the higher education piece is, as far as I know, not something that the city can really control, but it is something to consider while talking about these issues. Something else that isn't exactly listed here is just basic costs that go with school, like just children that are attending public schools, because you buy sometimes uniform or maybe a new backpack or a lunchbox, or just maybe like prepare some extra food for their lunch because they might not be eating enough. Like those things are also impacting people's daily lives. Healthcare, this is also something that is it's not exactly something that falls under city, like what the city can do, but it is something to also consider. And then taxes.
Something really quick about the education piece in particular. Going back to that slide, we are talking about private education, private schools for children, and higher education tuition and loans and other expenses. Are those the issues that the team in the long-term cohort proposed for us to tackle? Private schools?
No, this was just something that is associated with the cost of living. It's just that education piece. It's not something that members have explicitly just said that they're interested in. This slide isn't based on the preference form. It's just more an overview of what it is. And then after, we can tackle like the smaller pieces of it and what the city, like what we can do to improve that. Yeah. So those are like I don't want to say vague, but they're not related to the task force, sort of.
I forget what team I was in. I must have not been listening in the long term if I was sent to the long term breakout session or what. I don't remember where I was, but
You were at a hearing that day. Yeah.
Okay, that's why this is all very like, okay, I'm like, why don't I remember this? Because I would have probably said something if this would have come up while I was there. But okay, I wasn't there. That's why. Okay, thank you I'm so sorry, y'all, that I was not there, because now I'm really confused by my lack of understanding. And I was like, I don't know. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Kiara. I get
No
it.
worries.
I was not why we're here. Okay, all right.
Taxes. So just you pay taxes on literally everything, all those sales taxes, as well as the taxes now, the federal ones, that I know at least that you were mentioning. That is also something that very much affects people's cost of living, and it makes this season a very stressful one. Are there any questions related to the slide before I move on? Feel free to interrupt me or yeah, there's nothing in the chat. Counselor, is that like, did you just forget to put your hand down, or do you have a new question? Okay. Okay, so,
Yeah, so I was just gonna say around the taxes, the situation, um, is that I know that there are definitely some issues with property taxes in the city of Boston, sales tax, um, that, and then there's payment in lieu of taxes for certain institutions that I think can be tied to the higher education tuition. I mean, I think I'm just trying to figure out ways that we can loop in some of the things that we have control over or a possibility for structural change. And I think that the issues of payment in lieu of taxes, there is a direct correlation with the city and also higher education tuition prices with BU, Northeastern, Harvard, some of our big schools that are not paying their fair share of taxes. And I think from a structural standpoint, there is something there that we could potentially do around higher education tuition and also taxes. There's a nice mix there of something that we could potentially tackle within our organizing capacity. And then in terms of healthcare, okay, the city of Boston does have a animal control division. We also have, and they have a lot of support services for folks who have pets at a, to be able to take care of your pets at a discounted price. And then under the city of Boston, the Boston Public Health Commission, there are also, I know we have some community health centers that we oversee and support that we could potentially partner up with around helping to identify other low cost ways to support folks accessing quality care. So I just want to throw that out there as like things that we can potentially just tap into a little bit as we continue to have these conversations. I'm just trying to make sure that we continue to go back to connecting the dots for things that we could potentially do, because I really want to make sure that, especially with the long-term team, is that so much of this work is the long game, right? It's like it's it's not easy to change laws. There's a process, especially when we're doing deep structural changes. So I just want to like hone in on certain things that we have control over. So as we continue to have these conversations, we're setting you guys up for success, right? That we're not, creating a scenario that we have absolutely no control over. So just kind of want to name and connect to some of the things that we could potentially do as we continue to move through this work in that particular side.
And I think I just want to highlight something that Dee said in the chat. Excise taxes controlled by the city, that is something else that we can definitely talk about. And then I don't want to call you out, Ashley, but I think it's perfect that you're here because if I'm remembering correctly, you do work in higher education. Right. Okay, yeah. So it's perfect that you're here and that you can, if that is something that you all decide that you really want to pursue and talk about, you have someone here that really knows about
Yeah.
it.
And what would be helpful for this team? That's good to know, because actually, where do you teach at? Because are you one of those bad colleges that I just called out? Oh my God. But
Yeah.
I'm
So I occasionally I do teach courses at the School of Social Work at BU. Right now I'm taking a break from teaching. Actually, I'll be teaching again starting May. But my full-time role at BU is I work out of our Student Health Services, the Sexual Assault Response and Prevention Center. So I do prevention work within the campus through that department.
okay. So then you're special, right? You got a good, okay, we're gonna be nice to you, but BU does have some pilot issues that we want to like fix. But considering the services that you provide, I think, I'm not gonna have you carry the BU debt, but I do think that there's an opportunity for us to learn more about kind of how we can navigate that. Maybe we can pilot something small at BU
Mm-hmm.
as like I think that when we're trying to fix long term, sometimes we just need to do pilot programs before we pass something into law or we make it, a budget item, right? So maybe we can have you really help us think through some of these relationship, builders that we need.
And I've
Um,
recently like built a connection with our external relations department. And so I think there are opportunities and oftentimes, not often, but there have been a few occasions where external relations has connected with my department on wanting to like have things uplifted or shared like through us rather than through external relations. So I think there's ways to leverage those relationships to think about how I can bring like not only like my role at BU, but also my role like here, to like kind of bridge those gaps between our external relations and um, the city.
that's perfect. That's perfect. And then I was going to tell Kiara that maybe one exercise that we can do when we meet in our next meeting, we're going to bring the short term and the long term cohorts together. I think that we should do a budget presentation based on kind of like last year's budget. And maybe if we meet after the mayor introduces her budget to the council before we start deliberating on it. I think it is public. It gets filed with the clerk. Maybe what we could do is look at the issues that the short-term folks have identified and the long-term and walk through a budget exercise around some of the budget priorities that we could potentially be, even though you guys are long-term, there's certain things that we could do right now that help support the long-term work, right? Like if it's something that's consistent, right? So maybe we could bring the budget to the team, so that everybody can take a look at it and we can unpack it a little bit further. And then I also think that the long-term folks can benefit from hearing from the Office of Food Access. So I think that they could be a good presenter for our collective meeting, because I think both long-term and short-term um, can, there's some alignment there.
I can do that for our next meeting. I'll do the budget presentation. I could figure that one out. I got you. But I do also just want to point out real quick, the notes doc that I shared earlier today, if you look on that right now, there's nothing in there. That is because I am writing everything in my pink pen on my notebook. So that's my action task. And then I will take more detailed notes in that document so that you all have it there. But in case you're trying to follow along in that document and you don't see anything, don't worry, there'll be something there very soon. But moving on to gentrification and displacement. So I'll just quickly read through this. It's the definition of gentrification, a process of neighborhood change that includes economic change in a historically disinvested neighborhood by means of real estate investment and new higher income residents moving in, as well as demographic changes, not only in terms of income level, but also in terms of changes in the education level or racial makeup of residents. So where you see here that it says solutions, those are not like set in stone. These are the solutions that was listed out by the Urban Displacement Project. That does not mean that that'll really be realistic for the city of Boston, or that that is something that you all are really like interested in doing. This is just what they have said that are solutions for gentrification, and a lot of these things are stuff that has been mentioned in the past. So I just put it on here so that you all know. But it's policies, programs for protecting renters, more affordable housing, to preserve and renovate existing housing, as well as just basically involving community in these decisions, which is something that the city of Boston and many offices have tried to do. And maybe we could, if you guys are interested in figuring out ways to do this like better than it has been done. So Dee, I see. Oh, sorry, that was Counselor. Okay.
Yes, I'm doing what Dee Dee does. I'm chatting in the chat and just was acknowledging that, to Dee Dee's point, aside from excise taxes, there are other streams of revenue that the city has, like permits, parking. Like, I think that's why I wanted to bring you all the budget. We're having a hearing on Thursday, on the 20th, about the financial well-being of the city. And that's where we're going to look at all of the different revenue sources that we have, because we're leaving a lot of money on the table in terms of like spaces and places that we can, like increase to help support the cost of living. So I just wanted to, that's what I was saying in the chat. I wanted to thank Dee Dee for recognizing that not exercise. Excise tax is one of those things that we should know that is something that also impacts people, because we have to pay those, but there are other fees that we're paying. Like, one of the things that I proposed, and everybody thought I was crazy in 2020. I was so crazy that we did it anyways, but we COVID came and we weren't able to pursue it all the way. And then all the naysayers started telling us how to do it, which is interesting. That is really what looks policy changing, making. We proposed doing income adjusted parking tickets, whereas that your income dictates the fee that you would pay of your parking, because somebody who is unemployed or in between gigs, or are on a fixed income, and they get a $90 ticket, is very different than someone who is able to just pay it and they have disposable income. At $90 can make or break somebody. And so what we were thinking is like financial hardships for folks, like to be able to give them an income adjusted rate. So instead of $90, they only paid 30 based on their financial hardship or their income. And no one really liked that idea, but I thought it was worth pursuing. And given the financial situations that we're going to see ourselves in over the next few years, I think, Kiara, I'm going to say this to you because you most likely will have to follow up with Dulce, but I think that we should revisit that hearing order and introduce it as a way to reignite that conversation. And maybe it's not about income adjusted, maybe we do it specifically, like, I mean, we have to figure it out. I think that we could do it in a way that maybe we do people who are on fixed incomes. Maybe we do it for elders. Maybe we do it for people with disabilities. Like, maybe we do it for people who make under, I don't know. We have to figure out a way to do it in a way that's equitable, because what a lot of people were like, you do the crime, you play the dime, or whatever it was they say. I got a lot of pushback. It's not fair. People break the law. I said, no, like, people, that's like, they're not breaking the law. They just parked. Sometimes they're caretakers who are running in and out to take care of a loved one, and they leave their car thinking that there's not, that it's going to be a quick stop. And, they end up having to spend more time with that particular individual. But now they have a, $120 ticket. And they're, it's just, those are the sort of things that I think can help on the long term way of helping people who are experiencing financial hardship. So I said it, and that means, Kiara, we're gonna have to file it before somebody takes it and tries to do it. But I claim that lane.
I will follow up with Dulce on that.
Yeah. And then Melissa said something in the chat, because we're recording, so that everybody knows. Melissa from Councilor Flynn's office says that most time folks are serving, there've been a huge reduction on parking access in the city as well. You want to talk a little bit about what that means, Melissa?
I'm just so heartened by, what you said, Counselor, because, in serving, I'm working for Counselor Flynn. My main responsibility is to service Chinatown. And as everyone knows, Chinatown is sort of in the heart of the city. And a lot of our constituents in Chinatown are older adults, and they have limited English access. So for them to come to City Hall, it's quite intimidating. We have to go to the community and serve them, which means a lot of time I would drive my car, because I would go from, this job to another job to supplement my income. And as someone who's a city employee, I get ticketed all the time. And for the last 7 years, I've had, my car's locked, wrecked up, hundreds and thousands of dollars of tickets. And even though, I have certain tools from the city to help alleviate some of these burdens, a lot of times I feel for a lot of people, you're trying to serve, your community. However, we understand that, there's an environment justice concern with cars and pollution, and with, parking being reduced, we're seeing a lot of our blue collar um, friends and families having a hard time because, they do, like you said, counselor, we got a lot of fines, and it's not proportionate to their income, as well as their job responsibility. So I am so heartened by what you're proposing. Thank you so much.
Well, this is called constituent services, y'all. And this came, I don't even know how in the world we came. It was during, right before COVID. Do it, but here we are, and you all are making me think about things that we could be doing on a long-term fix here. So, Kiara, you're gonna probably put me on mute because I keep interrupting your flow, and I'm so sorry. It's supposed to be Kiara's meeting. I keep like, I'm gonna be quiet.
No, thank you, Counselor, and thank you for what everyone else said. I'm here to help you all, and so if you want to take the mic from me, go ahead. Um, but that brings us on to the discussion part. So this means that this time is yours to speak on these issues now, knowing a little more. If you didn't know that much about cost of living or gentrification, now you know a little bit more. Counselor, yeah.
I was just joking. I made a mistake. I didn't have my hand up. Sorry.
Okay. But yeah, so I'm going to take a virtual step back and put myself on mute and open up the floor to you all. So don't be shy, but please do discuss these issues. It's your time.
And Christina, can you listen? We haven't heard from you. I just want to make sure that if you are listening in, you could be heard. And if you want to add stuff, I just want to make sure that we're not forgetting about you. If you can turn on your camera. We still can't hear you.
Oh,
There we
sorry,
can.
everyone. No,
Yay.
sorry. I just wanted to make sure I was all settled in and not distracted from the road. So I just wanted to thank everyone for being here, and for just allowing us to make our voices heard. My first thought when she brings up this conversation is that everything is interconnected. Um, and in that form, there could be certain things that we may not think about, that we could open our minds to, like I've heard today. So I'm here to be a listening ear and also provide as much value as I can in the space that I'm in. Um, and I appreciate everyone else's input. So that's my thought. And I'm finally able to get myself off of mute. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, I appreciate everyone for being with me and being with us on this conversation.
Thank you. So when you say that, when you say you're gonna do a virtual step back, what's that mean? Like everybody just talks like is it like one person speaks at it? Who facilitates that? Does that is just a virtual popcorn type of stuff?
Um, by that I meant that I wouldn't be the person that was really the lead speaker almost. Like I would put myself on mute and facilitate when needed, but uh, I think you guys are adults, you can facilitate, and I think you all know basic rules about how to share mics and everything. So I'm not worried about you guys. I just wanted to make sure that I got out of the way and made space for you all to talk.
So I guess in terms of like just a some some things for you all to ponder on, and then just to maybe just prompts to work with. Maybe looking at the presentation that Kiara shared, some thoughts or reflections of areas that we might potentially be able to pursue, some specific policies, protocols, or procedures that you'd like for us to consider. Um, what else we might be potentially missing? Is that the type of conversation that we're looking for? Kiara, like, is that okay? So, okay, great. So that we all are having the same conversation. So y'all know, let's popcorn, let's go with it. Didi, I see you have your hand up.
So I think that the cost of living there's a lot of factors there. And for the interest of trying to make change, I feel like if we could pick like a couple of them to start focusing on, so we can like get all our ideas geared toward those instead of like the broader one. But I also wanted to bring up like gentrification because I feel like that one is a big topic and it doesn't seem like, I guess I'm thinking about there's a lot of federal things involved and like our actual stock of what's left for housing is dwindling away like every second, in my opinion. So I feel like that's one that I really would like to see us focus on. Um, I also, as a constituent, didn't have good experiences with our housing stability office. So I know last year, city um, council had increased their budget, and I guess I would like to see how we can maybe hold them accountable and see like support that work, but also make sure that they're doing what the name says they're supposed to do if they were increased the budget. So I think that's yeah.
So, thank you for that. About the gentrification piece, and specifically about housing, there is a lot that the city can do in terms of affordable housing. You have, for example, you mentioned the Housing Stability Office. That is something that you all can work for. And then next time when we have the budget presentation, you can see exactly how things are divided out in the budget in terms of housing. Um, so this can mean like anything from finding out ways that the city can build housing and build more affordable housing, or even renovate the existing housing. Because I know that Counselor can speak more on that because I was still transitioning into the office when this was happening, but I know that you did a tour of a lot of BHA housing units and kind of exposed the conditions that many people are living in. And that is something that is a reality for many people, that they aren't living in like housing that is good, basically, just like in good condition. So that is maybe something that if you all want to, it can be something that you can work towards, of like how BHA um talks, like not talks, but like maintains that affordable housing and those properties for the people who live there. Uh, and then, Stephen, would you like to elaborate a little more on your comment? Boston markets to the world now, the last thing people care about is local people. And then after Stephen talks about a little bit about that, if you would like, then I'll go back to you, Dee. Okay, so I'll come back to you, Stephen, if you would like to. You just raise your hand or unmute. Um, Dee, go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up a quick thing when it came to BHA. Um, I do believe that I'm not sure if everyone is aware of how BHA or the subsidized properties work, but funding comes federally and statewide.
Okay.
And our federal stop when it comes to public housing is basically going to be null and void eventually, because this is a while ago. This was when Obama was in place. They had put in a pilot program that now still exists. And basically what's happening is the federal government is basically saying, like, we don't want to have projects anymore, or what we call subsidized housing. So the way that they came to that conclusion was they started this pilot program, and the pilot program allows municipalities to put their housing into a bid to go from public housing only, like a projects, to mixed income. So almost all, I don't know if you want to quote me on all, but a large sum of the federally funded projects that we have will no longer, they're already in the works to be redeveloped into mixed income. But the state funded, I know some people don't have the same idea when it comes to the projects. I see the good things that can come from mixed income, but I also believe that there's a lot of cons that come from it. And I would love to see that we make sure that our state funded properties are fully funded through the city. I know it's state, but like anyone that is in the Boston area is getting the max amount of funding possible, just because our city does have a lot of money. And a lot of times, the BHA is a landlord, and although I'm not taking the responsibility away from them, the reality is that if they have $50 million worth of property that needs to be renovated, fixed, kept up with, but they're not even making that money, then it's going to be hard for them to, be the landlord that we want them to be. So I do see that. I do feel like that's one thing I would advocate for, is that the city backs the state funded subsidized apartments as much as possible.
Councilman here.
Yeah. I love when I'm working with people who know what's happening in the city. So, Edie, for bringing that into the mix here. I also think it's really important to note that you're absolutely right. The federal government right now, in terms of subsidies, we're all at risk, considering everything that is going on. And there are some local there's some local vouchers that we were able to, for BHA specifically, that we were able to put aside, as well as in the budget, we also looked at home ownership and some funding stipends for, not stipends, but funding opportunities for people to become homeowners, right? Because we know that that's also another pathway towards stabilizing the, gentrification situation. It's like people are able to purchase a home and also create, especially if it's a two-family, like in my case, my brother and I share one side with our kids, and then my mom lives on the other, right? Like, so we were able to stay here, but we all had to pull our resources to be able to do that. So there are definitely opportunities for the city to help invest in some of those um, types of programs that does not begin and end with federal funding. And I think that the more independent that we can be in this moment, as much as possible, the better. But the BHA situation, there are a lot of leases, I guess, if you will, that are ending soon. And some of the BHA units that were once upon a time public, some of those units are also being snatched up for, more, I wouldn't say luxury, but it just more mixed income status, right? And so there's some of that happening as it relates to BHA. And I'm not sure if I derailed the whole entire conversation, but I just think it's important to note that was what was established once upon a time for affordable housing, now is being, mixed use, and there's just, it's some trade-offs is how people are positioning it. Um, and I see Dylan, you came on camera. Y'all, I pay attention This is the visual code that somebody want to say something. So at this point, I'm gonna put myself on mute.
Cool. Thanks. I was just wondering whether it would be worth exploring whether there are any underutilized sources of affordable housing. Like in particular, I don't know if I just have a weird experience, but like the only good lottery number I've gotten for housing was for the Pride senior community, and I am not yet a senior. But it's really hard to find wheelchair accessible, affordable housing. Um, and uh, the uh, the senior communities that don't take in any non-seniors have when I've talked to people, they've said things like that they're concerned that it would alter the character of their community. But like the Pride is not full. Still, it hasn't been full since it opened, and like I get notices for it all the time saying like, "Please apply, please apply." Um, and I wonder whether like if it turns out that say senior communities are going unfilled, whether anything could be explored in terms of increasing access, just even like, 2 units in every senior community that has more than X number of vacancies, or other things having to do with access. I'm also wondering if there's a way maybe to broaden access to homeless set aside units so that more homeless people have access to those.
That's a great recommendation. And again, going back to you don't know what you don't know. That's why these opportunities to be in community with folks, even within a task force environment, is helpful. So, Dylan, what would be helpful to us if you could send Kiara an email specifically about your situation, because these are the sort of opportunities that provide us, like maybe we could tweak, and this could be a case study. This could be, to Ashley's point, like serving people, not just the aesthetics. Like, like how do we push on that conversation? So, Dylan, I think you should, given your housing situation right now, I think you would be a prime candidate to be able to figure out how we can, help support and look into what could be modified, given the fact that there's units available and you need one, right? And if you
Thank you.
qualify,
I'll definitely send that email.
and your age, and not just, this is a public forum, but so it's for seniors. And so, like, I don't know if we're going to be breaking the rules too much if we try to get you in there and you're not a senior. So I also want to be mindful of that. So maybe it could be seniors and people with disabilities. Like maybe we can, I don't know. We have to talk to the folks. I don't want to make decisions for the folks that created the Pride. Like I don't know what I don't know. So let's just send us an email, and that's something that we could potentially look into.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. That's my mom yelling at her little puppy, y'all, just so you know.
Ashley, go ahead. Yes.
I don't have like much to share. I think I'm just like kind of ruminating on the like conversation around housing. I feel like I have like a unique housing experience for most people who lived in Boston. Like the first 8 years here, like I lived with roommates under like a private landlord, and not with one of like kind of a larger company. And in my time like living there, I think my rent in those 8 years like only increased by $200. And like I hear, and majority of the people I know talk about their experience of having to move from apartment to apartment every year, every 2 years, because like rent is increasing dramatically. And they're experiencing this under companies versus experiencing it under like a private landlord. And so I don't know. I think some of my perspective now, having living in a community where the landlord is a company versus an individual, has been interesting experience because now I've already had my rent increased $200 in the 3 years that I've lived here. Maybe it's been $300. And so it's interesting to see how rapidly companies will increase their rent. And I can imagine that has a huge impact on housing stability and people having to navigate what the moving costs look like and whether it's worth staying in their apartment or moving. Then so all of that to like kind of like reflect on like what are things that we can do in terms of holding like some of these larger companies accountable for like they're chasing profit versus like continuing to maintain housing. And like obviously they're not mission driven organizations. Their goal is to make profit, but how do we kind of challenge that with laws or whatever it may be to minimize the amount of profit someone can make on something that's an absolute necessity for people to have in community being housing.
That's great. I think, and there's two things. One, something that Dee Dee said in the chat around how the Office of Stability is, you know, how do we know, how we're holding ourselves accountable to the number of folks are keeping our constituents here, right? Like that is an accountability measure. One thing that we learned that post-COVID, I don't know exactly the number, but I think it was 28% of, and Kiara will Google this and fact check me, make sure that I'm not lying up in here. But I believe that 28% of Black residents, we saw a decrease, which meant that 28% of our Black, or I don't know, some percentage of our Black population moved out of Boston. And so it's either 18 or 28, it's some percentage. It might have been 13 or 8. Or am I just exaggerating? It was a percentage enough for me to be like, dang, a lot of uh, particularly people of color were displaced or moved from the city of Boston. And so there is definitely some data there in terms of the migration. And actually, a lot of it has to do with the limited of checks and balances of what people are paying and the moving costs. And I know one of the things that the council is looking at right now under Councilor Breeden, Councilor Louis-Jean, and I believe Councilor Pepeng, and the council is really looking into right now, is looking at, and it's already gone over to the State House, looking at those broker fees that we also have to pay first last month in security. That's like sometimes coming up with like $6,000, or $10,000 just to move in. And I think that that's also a burden on renters. And so they're looking at right now at how do we shift that burden instead of on the renter to the owner. So they're or to the broker. So we're really trying to figure out how we can do that. See, 3.3%. No. It was after that. It was 2020. It was after COVID.
But I'll check up on it.
Yeah. It was after COVID. It was a data point that after COVID, Senator Wilkerson was talking about the migration that has happened. And I'm not sure if it was reported on, but it was definitely some data that's been circulating out there. It was post-COVID. Didi, you have your hands up. Go ahead. And then
I'm sorry. I ended up putting something in the chat. I was just gonna also say that I believe that's a great initiative that was started with the realtors, because I do believe, just have recently gone through my own housing crisis. I do believe that the realtors are gatekeeping the housing stock that we do have from the actual constituents, because we have such a high demand for housing. Landlords have a particular group of people or certain, person that they want into their unit. And if you don't fit that, the realtors, even though you, the tenant, are paying the realtors are technically gatekeeping these apartments, and I went through it for months. Um, so I will say that, but I remembered why I had my hand up. I'm sorry, you guys. I get real passionate about housing because I've been gentrified out of 3 different locations now in the city, and it's now to the point where it's like, hold on, I'm not about to move out of Boston, so I'll be sleeping at City Hall soon. Don't play with me. I'm gonna get a tent. But I wanted to clarify, um, on a city level. I know on a state level, city council and the administration, rules administration can't do anything for rent control. But on a city level, is there some type of rent control that we could put into place? Is that possible? I'm not really sure. I was wondering if you could clarify that.
Yeah, so council submitted something. It's a home rule petition. It's around rent stabilization. And so that is definitely something that we are working on. What we could do, and also what we've been pushing for, is to increase the number of affordable units that get built on every project. Right now, it's at 20%. It was at 13 when I first ran for office. Now it's at 20. What we're trying to do is increase the number of affordable units that get built. The problem that we have with that is that it's the market right now, even to build, is really difficult. So it's harder to push um, for those increases, but the city is definitely trying to grapple with the supply and the demand situation. One conversation that we haven't had, and I'm glad this is being recorded because if somebody wants to, you know, take it, we could be like, we said it first, but we need to start thinking about it's not just a building affordable housing. We need to start looking at the existing stock that we have and how we refurbish existing stock. There's lots of triple deckers, there's lots of Victorian homes here that we can really be creative if the city would 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 invest and partner up with the developers to how do we look at what we have and make what we have work for the city of Boston, because that it will most likely be cheaper to refurbish existing homes than, I don't know, but maybe I'm completely wrong. But I do think that there are also a lot of landlords who would rather leave their unit empty than to rent it. And we're not incentivizing landlords by saying, we could help with some sort of subsidy because people don't feel comfortable renting out right now. They feel like, why if I can hold out to get 3,200, then I will. Whereas what we should be doing is saying, let's help you stabilize the market. Let's subsidize you at, keep bringing the rent down to maybe 1,600, and we provide some subsidies to these folks who are holding on to units. So I think that there are ways to think about this creatively, but I'll say this, I am not, I don't work in the housing space. My area of expertise is more education and issues of mental health and wellness and civic engagement. So the housing market is not, and I'm not trying to speak with any sense of authority because it's an area that I don't know well, but I do know that I am looking for and building alongside folks who are interested in unpacking how we meet this moment. Okay, Christina, go.
Hi, everyone. Well, I'm just listening to everyone and what their thoughts are. I'm just taking in as well. Speaking as a licensed agent myself, we do get looked at as the bad guys. As far as I just want to quote Dee Dee a little bit here. She said, "Oh, darn it, gatekeeping." Um, and I do want to just reiterate the fact that we just provide the service to landlords or tenants that are looking for that housing. And I think, like Julia mentioned, I have thought of different ways we can approach the the high cost of living, of rents, as well as anything that the city or the mayor can do as far as subsidizing these rents. Actually, Didi, myself, and Melita, we were like digging deep and thinking about all these things as well, and had that conversation. I do want to actually just talk about different things as we go into what it may look like, such as Mayor Wu has already done a ton as far as strictly getting city funds, specifically, especially in the climate that we're in. She could obviously do more always, but 64.2 million for affordable housing this year, just for preserving and creating income restricted housing across 8 Boston neighborhoods. That's just one thing. We do obviously have to consider the funds or lack thereof that we'll be receiving on the federal end. But there are different things that we mentioned, such as developers and different policies that are in place that have the loopholes in order for them to create the units that we have. And just so that you guys have an idea, Boston is considered one of the least affordable US metros. And I just wanted to reiterate that just because only 13% of the region's housing stock are actually considered affordable, quote unquote. But we obviously know there's AMI that we have to consider, which is the area median income for different surrounding neighborhoods. And that includes Newton and Wellesley in that conversation, which is obviously very wealthy. But just to go back into policy, the inclusionary development policy in particular just requires developers to provide at least 13% of the units as affordable. But the conversation again is about AMI. What is really affordable? What does that look like to the person who is looking to rent? And I will say, based on experience and conversations I've had with landlords, for some reason, people just don't want to accept Section 8, but I do want to keep in mind that that is illegal. You cannot deny that person based on their financial status. So that is just something I wanted to reiterate there, and that is all. I will land there.
And you know what? Christina ended just in time because she was beginning to um, the audio started to space out. Dylan, I'm going to go to you next, but I'm just going to say something really quick. Is that one of the biggest investments that the city council has in our previous budgets? We have poured more money into housing. At least in my 5 years on the council, we have gone really hard on those investments that Christina just uplifted. During ARPA funding, we've increased millions and millions of dollars into affordable housing. And this past budget cycle, we on the city council passed affordable earmarks for not just units but also home ownership. So we have been incredibly aggressive, but one of the things that we haven't been able to do successfully is this question that I keep asking: affordable to who, and how we're defining affordability if we are looking at this with our neighboring Newton and other folks who have far more money than we do. So one of the things that we've been advocating for, and maybe this is the coalition that can help us make it happen as a, as a task force, and y'all have the appetite for this, is that I'd love to see regional neighborhood targeted AMIs. So, because I don't even want to do Boston, because if we look at Boston, what people make who live in Back Bay and Beacon Hill is very different than what people make in Mission Hill and South Bay, right? Like, so I think that what we should be looking at, Kiara, this is something else that I want you to flag to the policy team, is how we can start looking at AMIs that are regional, because while the federal and state have their own metrics, there's nothing to that says that the city can't create our own set of, like, factors, and maybe it's regional. or maybe we look at the East Boston, Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, some of the lower neighborhoods, and then that could be a region, right? That could be Area C, and all of those folks, all of those neighborhoods, and all of the housing in that area. I don't know. This is just me thinking out loud. There is no easy fix here, but this is the task force. This is an open discussion. This is an opportunity for us as a collective to think about as many different pathways towards success. So just throwing that out there for something for us worth looking into. And Dylan, you are up next.
Thanks. I've been thinking a lot about the probability that housing costs for all of us who live here are being pushed up by a constriction in housing supply, fueled by people buying housing as investment properties, Airbnbs, that sort of thing. And I'm wondering whether there might be some city mechanisms that could make it a lot less attractive for people to buy property and just leave it vacant. A vacancy tax, maybe higher Airbnb fees. But yeah, a lot of that going on in different stuff. I read a study about it's ridiculous how much housing prices in all American cities is pushed up by people who are really, really rich, and they buy housing units in every city that their favorite sports teams play in, just so they can have a place to stay when the team plays there. Like, you know, we maybe could do something about that.
Yeah. I've been talking about this. Thank you for that, Dylan, of doing a displacement tax. I always say it just to threaten everybody, but I don't think anybody really thinks I would be serious about doing it. But if we had to pay a displacement tax to folks once we gentrify them out, then I think that the city would feel more accountable to making sure that we're doing everything in our power to keep our people here. And so that displacement tax, the burden falls on somebody if you live in Boston and got displaced and now you have to travel from Brockton, but you still work in Boston and you have to uproot your kids. I think there's an opportunity for us to consider kind of like more like for the city or even for the landlords, you know, these LLC folks who are out here buying up entire blocks and holding them down. I think that you know, I think we need to be a little bit more aggressive on how we reinforce and enforce those things, those loopholes, because some people always find their way around them. And you're right, Dylan, like those Airbnbs and all that. I think it's time for us to revisit all of those things. So there are already ordinances in the books. And I think these conversations really help inspire us to think about things that already exist. And maybe it's an opportunity for us to, maybe it's an opportunity for us to see what areas we need to strengthen. So, for example, when the whatchamacallit, the Airbnb, I think that was passed through. I think it was Councillor Edwards and Wu at the time proposed that. Maybe we can look at that and see if it's meeting the moment. Because when it was first written, I think Airbnbs were starting to pop up. And maybe we could do an analysis of like, you know, the frequency and how many are registered and kind of like where's that. And then those taxes, that Airbnb tax, maybe we should see how those funds are being used. And maybe those funds can be used to help support some of the rental subsidies that we need to help support landlords who aren't doing Airbnbs but could lower their rent. So that's just something to consider. We're out here making, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm really feeling like is it me or do I really feel like we're making things, we're coming up with some really good ideas here, Kiara. Maybe some of these things have already happened and we don't know them all, but I'm inspired. Hi, Kiara.
Yeah, no, I have like 3 pages. I don't think you could see it. It's like in pink, but I have like 3 pages of notes. I'm going to transfer these to the docs so that you all have access to them, but just jotting down everything. I did want to highlight um something that Dee Dee said in the chat that there is an affordable housing loophole. There is, I think that they mentioned Article 80, but some other, like another task force member had mentioned developer loopholes and how that was something that they were passionate about. So that is something that just came to mind. But I do think I really do want to highlight this last part that you said about how apartment sizes. So, for example, if you have um, like a family and there's 3 kids, you would want to have 4 bedrooms. That's one for each kid and then one for the parent or guardian. But if you're only having like studios or like 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, like as you mentioned, it is excluding a good amount of people that don't have access to that affordable housing. So, just something that I did want to highlight that was in the chat in case anyone missed it. But, was that a mistake, Didi, or did you want to say something?
I don't have
Yeah, that was a mistake. I thought your hand was my hand. I was like, wait, I didn't put that up. So that was.
No worries.
also for like a good next step. And in addition to sharing the notes, maybe you can link some of the existing ordinances that we've discussed, like the whatever, I think it was the Airbnb tax. There's some IDP conversations. There's also the broker fees situation. So why don't we put together some of the items that we discussed or any documentation? I know that Lewis also shared here in our chat that Harvard is going to be free for families that make under $100,000. But I will say first, our kids got to get into those schools before we can get that money. So they're going to have to say, and you're a Boston Public School student that does not have A's and B's that, with, oh, it's 200. Okay. But
I
anyways,
will say,
I think it's important so let's just like whatever information is shared here, if you can find some links that you can include in our notes so that everybody has access to the same information, that would be really helpful. And it sounds like, and then I would like for you to include the hearing order on the adjusted parking and then send them the budget for particularly the investments that were made in housing. I think it would be great for everybody to have, so that they can see what we fought for in the city budget, and some of the investments that Christina lined up. I think the city council has been really good at, reviewing and fighting for and securing additional funding for affordable housing, and rent stabilization initiatives. So send that. And then I think we have 15 minutes left of our time together, right? Or that's what my time says, 7:30 to 9:30, but
yeah, I
we
usually made the meeting for 2 hours, just in case we did go a little over a 1.5 hour. I will say though, I'm something that I'm really proud of. As a UMass Boston student, UMass Boston specifically did make tuition free for anyone who earned under $70,000. So that's new. Also, if you graduated from BPS, you do get $1,000 scholarship, renewable. So that's good. I do think that we can do better with that. $1,000 doesn't go a long way. Tuition is expensive, but it's a start. And I did just want to highlight that because, that is my school. But yeah, that's it. That's all I really had to say for that last part.
I love you advocating for your school. Yes, for that. So I think for the next 15 minutes, if we could just put some closure to, if there was any last minute things that y'all really wanted to say and you came ready, but we didn't go there. This is your time to share those things, right? Ashley, you want to go first? Okay, because you got to go, but she got to leave right now. Okay, Ashley, bye. That's okay. She already
Okay. Thank you.
chat. But if um if there's anything here that we didn't talk about that you wanted to make sure got addressed or on the record, or any discussion that we didn't explore in our time together.
Real quick, I just wanted to add, when we mentioned the affordability and the housing and all these the landlords and different projects that are meant to be affordable, but then turn to be not as affordable as we expect. Just some. I think what we're missing, and Councilor, you mentioned it. It's that loophole. It's that once you enter in that contract that you're gonna provide certain amount of units at a certain level of income to stick to it. So regulations got to change in that, but also if we can create, I know the city of Boston does it right now, but it's not mandatory. There is a online portal where you're supposed to register all units, all rental units. So if we can make that mandatory, that will provide a good track of how many units are there, how many of those are affordable, what's the real income that you're receiving for those. Obviously, that's gonna, people are gonna lie about the rent and stuff like that. But I guess we can get a good guess of how many of those are private, how many of those are public, if you're receiving subsidy and stuff like that.
That's great. Yeah. I think some of those, the portal is specifically for like income restricted, but I think that having something for other like, public, like private accounting, I think that that's good. And then I think Dylan mentioned a vacancy tax that it already is in the books. I think there's needs to be more enforcement around some of that in more local ways, not just companies and LLCs, but there are some other, folks. I think what I've learned in my time in the not in the housing space, is that, there are a lot of developers, particularly developers of color, and also realtors of color that are really trying hard to help support and to meet the financial hardships that so many of our rent burdened Bostonians face. I don't think that, things are done intentionally. I just think that it's just a perfect storm that's happening all across the country. And if Boston can get ahead of it, we don't want the title of the most expensive city in the country. We don't want that. We want to change that. We want to go. We want to be. We want to know. We want to be known for something else. But I will have to say that, and I'm not going to keep targeting higher ed institutions, but we are also the capital of universities and healthcare, right? And so all of these folks are doing business here in the city of Boston, and they're occupying a lot of housing space, and like BU and other folks. And I think that we have an opportunity in that space to, tap into that. Stephen, I see you were trying to get it here. Do you want to say something before we wrap up with this conversation?
No, no, I'm not gonna say anything. I'll mess the room up, Julie. But I send you some heat so you can get loud about some things.
Yeah, I did see that. I'm gonna send it to my policy team to look into.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right, because everybody wants me to get loud about everything, y'all. That's why I don't have a voice right now. Y'all can't keep doing this to me. And I think, oh my God, it came and went, but the schools really started a housing crisis, and the schools taking everything into space. No, wow. I'm just gonna say something, Dee, that I used to work when I worked in the education space. I always used to say, man, we're improving our schools, and as soon as we do, they're gonna displace us, and we're not gonna be able to afford to live in the area where we're doing advocacy in. And that was like, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And what I'm seeing is that there's school gentrification, there's housing gentrification, there's service provider gentrification, like all these folks who have been living and working and building their homes and their families and their educational outcomes here in the city of Boston. We are being displaced, not just out of our homes, but also out of our school communities, and all of those things have an impact on our social and emotional and mental well-being, which is one of the other issues that we didn't get to tackle. But mental health is at the underlining of all of these things, right? And I think financial instability impacts our mental health and wellness, right? All of those things are interconnected, and I think that we can unpack that um, particular bucket when we meet again as a cohort, because we spend a lot of our time in housing and cost of living, which is those are very much interconnected with each other. And the next time, let's just pick up with mental health, since we didn't give that much love. I'm gonna kick it back to Kiara so she can talk to us about next steps. I think you had this meeting, um, the third Mondays. Let's keep the third Mondays, right? And then when we meet with the larger group, we could do those on Wednesdays, because I don't want to mess up the flow that you already created for this cohort. Because I just saw my invitation that this cohort meets the third Monday of every month. So I'd like to keep that. If that's what you set up, I'd rather honor that as is.
So I don't know if I had shared that information with everyone, just because April specifically, the third week of April is school vacation week, and I don't know who will be. It's like the school vacation week for Boston Public Schools, and I don't know has who like will have to like will be out of the country, out of the city, or whatever might be busy during that school vacation week, or just might want to spend a little more time with their families. So that part I hadn't decided on yet. We hadn't like finalized a date for that yet, but Counselor, I know that you had mentioned maybe even moving it from Mondays to just Thursdays, every third Thursday. I don't know if that's something you want to pursue, but just like if there's no specific date that this team meets that's different from the other ones, it's just whatever. Like if it keeps on going, if it keeps on being the Mondays, then it would be the third Monday for like 1 month. It would be short term. The next third Monday would be long term, and then the next third Monday full group. So it would be like that. I don't know if we'll keep it Mondays or Thursdays. It's just we're trying to figure out something a little more consistent, just so that you all can have that on your calendar and don't have to like, it's just easier on you guys. So yeah.
I think that it's every other month that we do the whole cohort, or is it every month that we meet with everybody? I forgot.
So it's short term 1 month, the next month long term, and then the month following long term is whole group.
Okay. So it's not like we're gonna be
Mhm.
meeting every Monday. I was like, okay, wow, wait a
No,
minute.
yeah.
Okay. I can deal with that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we could do a doodle poll to see if Thursday or Monday works best for people. And then I would like to, when the weather gets nicer, like to do a meeting with everybody in person. For those who feel comfortable, we'll do a hybrid option for those who don't. But it would be good for us to, build community with each other. If there's possibility to do something in person, that would be great. But that's when the weather gets nicer and people are, we can be outdoors. That's the long-term goal.
No, I think that would be nice to do it so I could finally meet you all in person. I know your names. If you send me an email, I'm like, oh, I know this person. They're in the task force. They're in this like I know you guys. I just don't know your faces. I've never met you. I've never met most of you in person, but it would be really fun. And that is definitely something that we can do over the summer when it's nicer out.
Oh, and then Kiara, you talked about like keeping the communication within the team, and that did you talk about that? Did I break up? Did I hear that? Did you already do that, Pete?
I mentioned it earlier, but I can to reiterate, communication will be sent through the email chain. So the email chain that I had sent out the reminder earlier today that is the email chain that's for the long term. So anything that if you all want to like say, hey, I found this article, I think it's really interesting, it's something we'll like consider and think about, you can put it in there. There's also the research doc, which I will share again with you all. And it just has a couple of like a couple of links and stuff you can check out to learn more or just keep updated. I always add a couple more things in there every time I see something that's helpful. But it could be anything like that or just like, oh, bye Dee Dee. Thank you so much. But yeah, that email chain is used for everyone. So like if you guys have anything to say, you put it in that email chain. Just because that has everyone in there and it just makes sure that we all are getting the same amount of information and we're not all on different levels, so to speak. Counselor, did you have something to say?
Yeah. So before we lose more people, does everybody want a word of how they feeling when we're closing out? That way we can open the circle and close it. I know that's corny, but it's just a practice. Y'all gonna have to get used to this. But I'll go first to Luis. How do you feel now that you're moving on? Wrapping up one word that describes how you're feeling right now. Ah, either you're on mute or you're multitasking. We'll come back to Lewis. We'll go to Dylan.
Hopeful.
Hopeful. That's awesome. Great. Steve.
I can go next. I am feeling excited for the future.
Stina.
I have my baby boy here, so please, I'm gonna have him speak for me a little bit. um, yeah, just very happy and grateful. Again, change maker. That's my word.
Awesome. Melissa. They probably thought we were done with. Haha. All right. So Steve, Lewis, or Melissa, if you want to share how you feel.
This is Melissa. I'm so excited. I feel like I've learned a lot and from the wisdom of everyone, as well as the challenges, as well as insight. So I really look forward to joining you again and continue to widen my horizon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Stephen.
What was that, Julie? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say how you're feeling as you leave here. Like, where's your
I think it was there's a lot of things I don't agree with or don't align with and don't see eye to eye. But I love the information that was given. I love the professionalism, and it's beautiful to see people come together even though they don't agree, but still have a safe space to speak and talk.
I love that. That's the goal. That was the goal of this task force, is to bring people together across their differences and understand that not everyone's always going to be happy and that we're not always going to get everything right. But the goal is to give people a space so that we can get to a place where we can feel like we're all rowing in the same direction at the very least. So thank you for that, Steve.
Oh,
That really
absolutely. You definitely did that.
really affirms. Yeah.
Even though every time I see people, I hear people of color or BIPOC, my skin and just turns and feel like I early. But that's just personal, my personal opinion. But amazing space per usual.
Thank you. Thank you. Louis?
I was feeling positive about all the feedback and the expectations. So it's hard to make a change. Takes resilience.
Yeah, I feel grateful and hopeful. Like I feel like we can make some things happen if we don't lose hope. So I'm excited for that. And thank you all for your time. I'm gonna give you back 3 minutes of your life because we're ending before 9:30. And I just want to thank Kiara for her leadership. She organizes y'all, she develops the agenda. Sometimes I walk in and I haven't had a chance to sit with her to review, but I just know that whatever she's gonna do is gonna be on point. And she's doing such an amazing job keeping us all together. So, Kiara, thank you for your leadership in this space. You have taken this to a whole nother level, and so we see you and we appreciate you. And I believe everybody went. So now I lied. I said 3 minutes, and I'm only giving y'all back 2. So I'm gonna go before I hold y'all hostage any further. Next time we'll talk about public safety, though, mental health and public safety. Since Steve, that's your area of expertise, I would love to have you step up into that conversation around long-term infrastructure for public safety issues.
Oh yeah, I got a lot to say about that, especially with the city of Boston saying that we're the safest major city, and keep pushing the gun violence when that's not only the only piece that makes safety. We are up in every other crime stat other than gun violence and murders. So it's a catch-22, and it's really, we shouldn't be saying that at all, especially after what happened at the St. Patty's Day parade. That didn't seem like a safe city to me. Finally.
So Kiara, the next long-term cohort, I'd love to talk about public safety and mental health, and then we'll review what we learned in this cohort around housing and cost of living. So we'll come back with some frameworks of things that we can pursue. All right, great.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody. I lied, y'all don't got no time back. Y'all better go right now. Bye. Thank you. Have a
Bye.
beautiful night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Kiara. Good job.
Bye.